The unsolved tragedy of Jill-Lyn Euto, a life cut short. Jill-Lyn Euto was 18 years old, a young woman with a bright future. She had recently moved into her sixth-floor apartment at 600 James Street in Syracuse, New York. The apartment was a place where Jill-Lyn could begin her journey of independence, a transition from childhood to adulthood, and a space to focus on her studies as she pursued her education. A freshman at a local college, Jill-Lyn was full of promise, her life ahead of her filled with ambition and dreams. She was known for her warm smile, her love for literature, and her compassionate nature. Jill-Lyn was an excellent student who enjoyed helping others, always ready to offer a listening ear or assistance with assignments. She had an easygoing demeanor but was also serious about her future, determined to excel academically and make a meaningful impact in the world. Friends and family often described her as someone with boundless potential, a young woman who had her whole life ahead of her, with so many opportunities to look forward to. On the evening of January 28, 2001, Jill-Lyn's life came to a horrific and unexpected end. She was found stabbed to death in her apartment, a scene that left investigators and those close to her in shock. It was a brutal crime, one that seemed impossible to comprehend for a young woman with no known enemies and a life just beginning to unfold. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the attacker may have known Jill-Lyn, or perhaps the assailant had gained her trust before carrying out the senseless act of violence. Her apartment, once a symbol of independence and a fresh start, became a crime scene. Police responded to the call quickly, but despite their best efforts, the clues they uncovered provided little insight into who might be responsible for Jill-Lyn's death. There were no fingerprints, no personal items that were taken, and no witnesses who could shed light on the circumstances of the attack. Her cell phone, wallet, and other valuables were untouched, making it clear that the crime was not motivated by robbery. Neighbors in the building were equally shaken by the discovery. While none of them had heard anything unusual that night, many recalled seeing Jill-Lyn earlier that day, bright and full of life, going about her usual routine. Her absence from class the next day raised alarms, and it wasn't long before friends and family began searching for her. The police quickly became involved, but the investigation seemed to stall as they struggled to find any solid leads. As time passed, the lack of answers only deepened the pain for those who knew her. Jill-Lyn's family, especially her parents, were devastated by the loss of their daughter. They couldn't fathom why anyone would want to harm her, let alone end her life. The questions kept piling up. Who could have done such a thing? Was it someone she knew? Had she been targeted for a specific reason? Or was this a random act of violence? Unfortunately, no clear answers would come. The Syracuse community, known for its close-knit nature, was also shaken by the murder of one of their own. While residents were understandably anxious, they were also deeply sympathetic to Jill-Lyn's family and friends, hoping for justice to be served. Over time, the case became a topic of discussion throughout the area, with many speculating about potential suspects or motives. But despite numerous theories, no arrests were made. Jill-Lyn's death soon became one of Syracuse's most haunting unsolved crimes. Over the years, the investigation continued to follow various leads, but nothing ever pointed to a definitive suspect. Some speculated that the murder may have been a targeted act, perhaps related to a personal dispute that had not yet come to light. Others feared that it could have been the work of a stranger, someone who chose her as a random victim. Despite the best efforts of the police, the case grew cold, and those searching for answers were left with only more questions. In the years following her death, Jill-Lyn's family, friends, and even some of her classmates refused to let her memory fade. They held annual vigils in her honor, hoping that someone might come forward with information that could lead to the truth. But as the years passed without significant updates, the heartbreak of not knowing what happened to Jill-Lyn seemed to grow heavier. Her parents, in particular, struggled with the crushing weight of uncertainty. They couldn't bring themselves to accept that their daughter had been taken from them in such a violent and senseless way, with no clear explanation. Their grief was compounded by the frustrating reality that the person responsible for her death had never been brought to justice. Jill-Lyn's friends also continued to carry the pain of her loss. They remembered her as someone who brought light into the lives of those around her, always ready with a smile, a joke, or an encouraging word. They missed her presence at school, where she had been a beloved figure among her peers. Her absence left a hole that could never be filled, and the memories of her were bittersweet. As the years turned into decades, the case of Jill-Lyn Euto's death remained open but unsolved. The authorities continued to review old evidence, hoping that new advancements in forensic technology might offer fresh clues. Despite the passage of time, her family and friends refused to give up on finding the truth. They kept Jill-Lyn's name alive, hoping for a breakthrough, hoping for justice. But with each passing year, the tragic reality began to settle in: Jill-Lyn's case might never be solved. Still, her story was not one of complete despair. The legacy of Jill-Lyn Euto, though tragic, served as a reminder of the fragility of life, the unpredictability of fate, and the need to cherish every moment. While her life was cut short, Jill-Lyn had impacted many in her short time. Her ambition, kindness, and warmth left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who knew her. Jill-Lyn Euto's story continues to serve as a call for justice, a plea for answers that remains unanswered. It is a story of a young woman who had her whole life ahead of her, a future stolen away in the blink of an eye. Her memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her, in the hopes of one day discovering the truth about what happened to her, and in the deep wish that justice will eventually prevail. But until that day comes, the mystery remains, an unanswered question that has haunted Syracuse for over 2 decades. Who killed Jill-Lyn Euto, and why?